As we're moving on with our evening together, going to take this a little bit more serious in our next presenter. Those of you who were in Edmonton, you heard her before. You're going to hear some new information from Zuzana tonight. What she has gone through in Czechoslovakia, why she left and came to Canada, would be kind of obvious for everybody. You leave a communist country because you want to be free. Well, because she watched that country make that transition, there's some very scary similarities. Very scary similarities. And she's going to share those with us tonight. Who better to tell us? We don't need political scientists. We need people who have actually boots on the ground lived this out. So, would you please welcome Zuzana Genesova-Denbor.
Okay. Thank you very much. At the beginning, I have to say I never ever was speaking in front of so many people, so please bear with me. And I don't have my slides, so I have to rely on my oratory skills. So, let's talk. My name is Zuzana Genesova-Denbor, and I was born and raised in communist Czechoslovakia under dictatorship which enslaved my homeland for more than 4 decades. In 1997, I moved to Canada hoping that socialism and communism will never ever be again part of my life. So try to imagine how I feel now as a Canadian when I see the same tactics, I can hear the same phrases which I saw and heard during years under communism, only this time in English. The recent happening led me to write an article called I Survived Communism, Are You Ready for Your Turn? You can Google this name. It was published in January 2019. It was my warnings to Canadians. Based on feedback which I received, I decided to launch by public speaking. In my presentation, I will describe the stages of communist takeovers, used also in the past by KGB. These steps have been explained by Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB defector, in his 1984 interview. So let's first explain one term, socialism. Communist indoctrination always starts with socialism. So what is socialism? Lots of people, they think that socialism is free healthcare and free education. Is that true? The simple answer is no. Okay, so socialism is system of society with specific economic rules. Just like we have capitalism, which represents our system of society, there is a different system of society called socialism. So what is the most significant difference between both systems? According to Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, all means of productions are owned and controlled by government state in socialism. Both socialism and communism believe in abolishment of private business. In simple terms, private business does not exist. How communism is tied together to socialism? According, again, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, the socialist mode of production is also called lower stage of communism. They use both terms, socialism and communism, interchangeably. So, the communism and socialism are not two separate systems, opposite. They are connected. What is the goal of socialism? According to Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, and I'm sure you heard this name, the goal of socialism is communism. The most recently, I heard even a new term called democratic socialism. Well, I can tell you right away, there is no democracy in socialism. Let me explain you. Thank you. Now, what is social service? We have private and public sector. Government collects revenues from both and provides society with social services. Example, healthcare, education, police. So let me summarize what I just said in the first part. Number one, socialism is system of society. Number two, social service is service paid by society. Number three, whoever is advocating for socialism, it's advocating consciously or unconsciously for communism. Why I'm focusing so much on explanation of this term socialism, I would like to read you a quote from Nikita Khrushchev. He said, "You North Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we will keep feeding you with small dosages of socialism until you finally wake up and find you already have communism." He also said, "We can take you without one shot." Do you know how you can call communism by using just one single word? This word is deception. Communists, socialists never disclose their real intentions. They come under different names, identities, slogans with one goal: total enslavement. Now let's move to part two, which actually it's talking about methodology of communism for seizing power. It has three stages: polarization, destabilization, and revolution or submission. Let's start with the first stage, polarization. First step, which communists they always did, was to turn public against private industry. How? They introduce notion of injustice. Then they add victimhood and entitlement. One group of people, poor workers, are made to feel victimized by second group to the point that they demand civil discourse. So who are these people who supposedly victimize poor workers? George Orwell had answer. He said, "Communists don't care about poor people, they just hate rich ones." For communists, the rich are owners of private business, especially successful ones. They are hated, demonized as a heartless, spiteful monsters who exploit their employees. The rich are public enemy number one. They don't care about people or the environment. They care only about profit and wealth. This is what I heard during communism every single week, what I just said. When I moved to Canada 22 years ago, the wealthy people have been called successful. Now they are rich or rich bastard. What happened? Are we starting to demonize owners of private business? Do you know why communists hate private business? Because successful private business owners are financially independent from government and communists cannot control them. To polarize society, the fear must be introduced. Fear is primary tool to keep people silent and obedient. Nobody wants to be ostracized, ashamed, excluded, even called by names. Dare to disagree, then communists would call you denier, traitor paid by rich imperialist, or subversive who wants to destabilize society with hate speech. Communists always use informers to identify their opposition. Those political prostitutes have been everywhere. We had them in every school, every office, every company. They were watching us. During first stage, communists are always concentrated on altruistic people, people with big hearts, full of good attention. Why? Because idealistic people are usually naive and easy to manipulate, especially with their emotions. Recognizing how essential these people are to success of his revolution, Lenin referred to them as useful idiots. So what else must be done to polarize society? Media. Communists always use media as a form of persuasion to promote their state propaganda. The purpose was influence to people's attitude, beliefs, and behavior. They use gullible concept. If you tell lie big enough and keep repeating, people eventually will come to believe it. This propaganda was creating conflict among society classes. They also did that they can isolate public from different perspectives. So that was regarding first stage, polarization. Let's move to second one, destabilization. During the second stage, the basic values of society are targeted for the change. This always starts with education. Let me read a quote from Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Give me your child for 8 years, and he or she will be communist forever. Communists, just like Nazis, knew that control of education is crucial to success of their ideology. Communism always used teachers and education system to impose their ideology, that exploit child emotional immaturity, lack of experience and knowledge. Teachers took advantage of their position of authority, of the natural trust that children place in teachers to brainwash young, vulnerable generation, to train next generation of communists. Scaremongering was favorite tactic. Fear capitalism. Otherwise, your country will be overtaken by imperialists and you will be exploited. My own indoctrination started in elementary school. In grade 4, we all had to become young pioneers. From that day, we've been taught about imminent danger possessed by capitalistic countries. We've been constantly reminded how we live in the best political system in the world, with a country with the best social justice and equality. After I published my article, I've been contacted by many concerned parents regarding the current trend in our schools. They felt like their children have been taken from them. I was also contacted by principal of one school who stated in his message, every student, every teacher in my school must read your article. It will be mandatory. Let me read you a quote from Abraham Lincoln, who said, the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be philosophy of government in the next one. The children currently attending our elementary schools will vote in 10-12 years. Children currently attending high schools will vote in 2-3 years. So, do we see these methods in Canada? I would like to share with you 3 examples which I saw. The first one happened in Toronto in 2012. Grade 3 class took to the street with signs to protest construction of Northern Gateway pipeline. The protest was organized by their teacher and local community volunteer. Guess what? Just like these kids who marched in the protest to save the planet, we too were made by our teachers to march with signs to save our country from imperialists. We had to march every single year, starting from elementary school up to university. The attendance was mandatory and controlled by teachers. Example number 2, it happened in Quebec in 2011. 6-year-old boy was disqualified from teddy bear contest because Ziplocs was found in his lunch instead of reusable container. How did this boy feel after being ostracized and excluded from his peers? Maybe he felt punished for his parents' action. So what's the next step? To encourage children to report their own parents who use Ziplocs instead of reusable containers? In Soviet Union, children have been encouraged to report their parents if they could hear anything what contradicted with the main ideology of Communist Party. Example number 3 happened here in Alberta, in Edmonton. In April 2018, Edmonton father went to elementary school to see his grade 4 daughter play in the play children sabotaged factory in the name of climate change, then went on to save Alberta from evil oil industry and greedy oil barons. Well, this one, it's textbook communist methodology, demonizing the private business oil industry by representing them as a greedy oil barons. So I will ask again, are we demonizing the private business? Are we teaching children to hate successful ones or envy them? You probably noticed that all my examples have been connected to climate change. When I was writing my article, I did lots of research, and I found the following information. In 1972, Gus Hall, then leader of Communist Party of United States, stipulated in his book, Ecology, human society cannot basically stop destruction of the environment under capitalism. Socialism is the only structure that this can make possible. In 2011, United Nations IPPC said, we redistribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. This has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore. The last example is from Canada, actually from Vancouver, April 2018. The climate alarmists went to the street with the sign which said, capitalism is killing the planet, socialism is the solution. This protest was organized by Communist Party of Canada. So, question, are we talking about climate change or system change? So, this is my statement. New eco-communism is based on all old communist ideological principles and beliefs, but use environmentalism as its agent of change to completely alter the core values of Western democracy and destabilize society. How education is playing a role in this process? Main goal is to create future generation of political activists, starting from elementary school to university, to impose socialism and create national political indoctrination. This indoctrination is teaching our children that in order to survive and save the planet, they need to accept and adopt socialist agenda and to be social justice activists. In the first year of university, I had a class called Scientific Communism. I remember when my professor proclaimed, it was scientifically proved that communism is the only social economic system provided masses with justice and equality. 100% of scientists agree on that. This topic is not up for debate. Most people, they don't question scientific statements because they think they are facts. They don't understand that scientific statements must always be challenged because science is not about consensus, ideology is. So that was stage number 2. Number 3, revolution. Let me share with you history, what happened in Czechoslovakia. In 1946 election, the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia emerged as the largest party. That was our last democratic election until 1989. In February 1948, the communists with Soviet backing assumed undisputed control over the government of Czechoslovakia. During the brutal 1950s, Stalin directed communists to carry out purges. Over 180 people have been executed in public trials. Whoever did not comply with socialism and communism were interrogated, intimidated, jailed, and subject to house search by secret police. Owners of private business and farmers become the enemies of the state. Large private companies have been nationalized immediately. By 1960, all industry and land have been confiscated. Communists included in Constitution Article number 4, which stipulated the leading force in the society and the state is Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. That is what we had even in Constitution. So, during my last part of my speech, it's devoted to some description of life under communism. It had two consequences, economic consequences and moral consequences. Economic consequences of communism is always the same, poverty. As Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. In Eastern Bloc countries, shortage of basic goods began in 1980. People had to get up at 3 a.m. in order to stand in line for basic necessities, such as bread, milk, meat, eggs. But you could stand in line for hours and not even have a chance to buy anything once product ran out. Let me talk very briefly about, so far, the most recent victim of socialism, Venezuela. Do you know that Venezuela has the largest amount of proven oil reserves in the world, even more than Saudi Arabia? Do you know that Venezuela was considered rich in 1960? Where is Venezuela now? So, their current collapse did not happen overnight. In 1998, they voted socialist president Hugo Chavez, who basically promised to fight income inequality and for universal health care. In 2001, he passed law for redistributing land and wealth. In 2003, he fired 18,000 oil workers from their state-owned company and hired his people. In 2004, all their private healthcare was socialized, and he started welfare programs which provided free education, medical care, clinics, school lunches, and housing, and their debt skyrocketed. In 2014, opposition leaders were imprisoned, and price of oil plummeted. In 2015, their economy collapsed. So, what is life now in Venezuela? Under Maduro. This is what one generation prepared for their children and grandchildren. They have regular blackouts of electricity, no access to running water, and no gas for weeks. Doctors have difficult time to offer basic service. They have food shortages. So, question for you guys. Do you think similar scenario can happen here in Alberta? So, question for you. What do you think? In what stage are we? We are in the second stage of destabilization of new communism. So, question. Are we so gullible that we can be taken without one shot, as Khrushchev predicted? Are we prepared to give up our freedom to those who advocate for socialism and new eco-communism, or are we ready to fight for freedom? Please. Freedom! My last message to you, don't be complacent. Don't underestimate state propaganda. And the most, don't let your children to be indoctrinated. Thank you.